All right, today we're diving into a really serious document. It's a formal request for a criminal investigation. But get this, it's not about some street crime. It's about an alleged scheme of manipulation coming from inside the justice system. We're talking about an accusation that a judge and a prosecutor actually worked together to rig a case. So yeah, let's get right into it.
And it all kicks off with this. Just one simple line, spoken by a judge, buried in an official court transcript. It sounds totally harmless, right? But according to the legal filing we're looking at, this one little quote, well, it's the key. It's what supposedly unlocks this entire complex plot to obstruct justice. Pretty wild.
So the document breaks down this alleged scheme into three, let's call them easy steps. Step 1, you intentionally create a super confusing jury verdict form, one that's almost designed to create an error but still get you a conviction. Step 2, you then turn around in a different case, and on the very same day you admit on the record that the first form was, flawed. And then step 3, and this is the crazy part, you use a sentence that looks really lenient plus this communication blackout to make absolutely sure the first defendant can't appeal the mistake you just made. It sounds like something out of a movie.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to look at two cases that were happening at the same time. We've got a defendant named Lynch and another named Johnson. Now, the filing is very clear. They were both accused of the exact same crime. But, and this is the big but, the verdict forms their juries got were, well, night and day.
Now this is where you really have to pay attention to the wording. It's kind of tricky. The form in the Lynch case, it uses what the filing calls negative phrasing. It literally asks the jury to decide if the defendant did not use something. It's a double negative, right? It's confusing just to say it. But then you look at the Johnson form and it's super straightforward. It asks, did he fraudulently use it? See the difference? One's a brain twister, the other's a direct question. That might not seem like a big deal, but in the legal world, it's everything.
And this table, it just lays it all out. It's the whole accusation in a nutshell. You've got the Lynch form, negative, complex. The Johnson form, simple, affirmative. The judge himself, and we'll get to this, admitted the Lynch one was confusing. But then, just look at the sentences. Probation for the conviction from the confusing form, and 15 years in prison for the one from the clear form. The filing is basically screaming that this is no accident. This was all by design.
Okay, so now we get to the part that the filing basically holds up as the smoking gun. This is the moment, they claim, where the whole thing was blown wide open right there on the court record. The moment that supposedly proves that confusing form wasn't just a simple mistake, it was a deliberate strategy.
So what you're looking at here are actual pages from the court transcript. You don't have to squint and read every word, but here's the gist. During a hearing for the Johnson case, the judge and prosecutor start talking about the verdict form from the other case, the Lynch case, and the document we're breaking down says this conversation right here is the proof, the undeniable proof of what they were trying to do.
And boom, there it is. The judge himself talking about the Lynch verdict form just says it plain as day. That's confusing. And right after that, he suggests they rewrite the Johnson form so it's not confusing. So think about what that means. The court is now officially on record admitting that the first form was flawed. That's a huge deal.
But it's the timeline here that the filing argues is just damning. Okay, so follow this. At 9 in the morning, the judge says the Lynch form is confusing and they fix it for the Johnson case. Fine. But then, just a couple of hours later, that same judge sentences Keely Lynch based on the verdict from that exact same form he just called confusing. It really makes you wonder, right?
And that brings us to what the filing says is the final piece of the puzzle, the last step in this whole alleged scheme. The argument is that the sentence Lynch got, which seemed so light, wasn't about being merciful at all. Nope, it was a tool, a trap, a way to make sure she could never, ever appeal that flawed conviction.
So here's how the trap supposedly works. Johnson, who got convicted with a clear form, gets hit with 15 years in prison. But Lynch, convicted with the confusing one, gets probation. Now, put yourself in her shoes. Why on earth would you risk appealing? You might end up with a much worse sentence, and on a surface, it looks like you got a pretty sweet deal. The filing says that's exactly the point. The difference in sentences was engineered to make appealing seem like a terrible idea.
But let's say she did decide to appeal anyway, right? Well, the filing alleges there was a backup plan. Her probation came with these unbelievable conditions that created a total communication blackout. And get this, it was timed perfectly to cover the 30-day window she had to file an appeal.
She was put in a mandatory facility. All her communications had to go through the judge's chambers. She could only talk to her 2 daughters. It's claimed this basically cut her off from the world, making it physically impossible to get legal help and challenge the verdict. So the big question is, why? Right? Why would a judge and prosecutor allegedly go through all this trouble? This incredibly complex plan for what? Well, the filing argues it was never really about this case. It was about everything an appeal of this case could drag out into the light.
According to this document, an appeal would have been like opening the floodgates. An appellate court wouldn't just look at the verdict form. They would have started digging into a whole history of other alleged misconduct in the case. We're talking about claims of withheld evidence, threats of an 80-year sentence to force a plea deal, even altered court records and an unauthorized database search by the judge himself. So this whole elaborate scheme, the filing says it was a firewall built to stop anyone from ever looking at all that other stuff.
So, okay, let's zoom out for a second. What's the bigger picture here? The document presents this as way more than just one messed up case. It's positioned as a fundamental challenge to the integrity of the whole system. I mean, it raises some really, really tough questions about accountability.
And the actual crime being alleged here is a big one: obstruction of justice. The legal definition is pretty clear. It's when someone corruptly endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due administration of justice. And the argument in this filing is basically that if you create a confusing form on purpose, admit it's broken, and then design a sentence specifically to stop someone from appealing that mistake, well, that's not just a mistake anymore. That fits the definition of obstruction of justice to a T.
Which really leaves us with the central, kind of terrifying question that this whole document poses. All these allegations, they aren't just pulled out of thin air. They're backed up with official court records, the verdict forms, the transcripts, all of it. But it leads to this really profound and, honestly, unsettling thought. When the very people who are supposed to uphold the law are the ones being accused of breaking it, who watches them? Who polices the guardian?